On this week's NFV SDN Reality Check, we look at some of the top headlines from across the space from over the past week, and speak with Genband on NFV development and integration challenges for vendors. Well, thanks for joining us on this week's NFV SDN Reality Check. I'm your host, Dan Meyer, Editor-in-Chief for RCR Wireless News. On this week's show, we have a featured interview with Sanjay Bhatia from Genband to discuss NFV development and integration challenges for vendors. But first, let's take a look at some of the top headlines from across the space from over the past week. Well, AT&T this week announced a deal with Radcom to migrate network probe functions to the cloud using the vendor's MaveriQ service assurance software platform. AT&T said the move is expected to boost performance, optimization, and help the carrier identify and isolate network issues. The deal calls for AT&T to use the software to deploy virtual probes as VNFs running on its AT&T Integrated Cloud. The virtual probes will be integrated into the overall network scheme using AT&T's eCom platform. AT&T's Integrated Cloud platform is where the carrier runs VNFs using OpenStack software at its core. The carrier said it has set up 74 AIC physical locations in 2015, with plans for 105 by the end of this year and adding hundreds more by 2020. Also this week, the ONOS Project's Core Initiative delivered on its first open reference implementation targeted at providing a single integrated solution platform for creating new customer services. The reference design is set to build on SDN NFV, Cloud, and open source platforms from ONOS, Trellis, OpenStack, Docker, and XOS, with claims a developer can auto-build Core on a single node within 1 hour. The reference implementation is also designed to support Core's 3 domain of use in the form of residential, enterprise, and mobile. In addition to the reference design, the Core and ONOS projects also welcomed Broadband Forum, Lime Micro, NTT East, Cordis, and Telefonica as collaborators. The Core initiative last month gained new partners in Google, Rate Assist, and Samsung, which joined previous members including AT&T, Verizon, China Unicom, NTT Communications, and SK Telecom, as well as vendors like Ciena, Cisco, Fujitsu, Intel, NEC, and Nokia. ONOS last month, in collaboration with the Linux Foundation, spun off the Core initiative as an independent open source project. There's definitely a lot of activity happening out of the Core project. Well, as mentioned, for our featured interview this week, we spoke with Sanjay Bhatia, who's the VP of Solutions Marketing and Strategy at Genband, to discuss NFV development and integration challenges for vendors. Let's take a look at the interview now. My name is Dan Meyer, I'm Editor-in-Chief for RCR Wireless News, and this week we are joined by Sanjay Bhatia, who's the Vice President of Solutions Marketing and Strategy at Genband, to talk a bit about the company and also about the NFV environment. So Sanjay, thanks for joining us this week. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Dan.
Very good. I'm going to start off with, for those who don't know much about Genband, maybe a little background on the company, kind of what you guys do and how you guys participate in the mobile telecom space.
Oh, absolutely, Dan. So Genban has been working with service providers and enterprises for a very long time. We're kind of deployed in the top 70 of the 100 service providers globally, those being some very large tier 1 carriers. And we pretty much offer, network transformation, unified communication solutions, embedded communication solutions to those service providers.
Got it. I know a lot of the applications you guys offer are kind of allow operators to compete against some of the OTT providers out there. It's kind of a nice way for operators to have maybe a branded offering that, I know at least in the unified communication space, kind of a way to compete against some of those guys out there. That's correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, certainly, we do offer white label solutions that the service providers can take and offer new services very quickly. Utilizing things like embedded communications or unified communications, so they can put their own brand on it and take that to market to their enterprise and SMB customers. Yes, absolutely.
Very good. I know that segues pretty well with the whole move towards virtualization. I know I spoke with you a little earlier this year at the Genband event down in Florida, and we talked a little bit about kind of the move towards virtualization. I know you guys have been doing quite a bit of work in terms of your own platforms, making them virtualize using NFV technology. So maybe, I guess, from your point of view, how important or how I guess has the development been in terms of NFV in terms of, from Genband's perspective over the past year or so, in terms of standards and things like that.
Oh, yeah, no. So Genband's been in it for a number of years now, pretty much ever since the first ETSI meeting started. And so, it's been actually, time flies fast. So it's been over about 4 years now. So we were in that conversation way up early. And so, development's working out great. We've had a number of products that we have released that are fully virtualized, fully elastic for the mobile operators and other kinds of operators as well. So, we're getting tremendous amount of traction and engagement with some very marquee names. Of course, I can't get into those right now, but and across a number of products and solutions for the mobile carrier.
Very good, very good. And obviously, I know you guys have done a lot of work in the past, like you said, with NFV, but also a lot of your products are already kind of software-based as it is. And so it does seem like the move towards virtualization for you guys is probably a pretty seamless, or as seamless as it can be, transition. But I'm guessing you guys have done quite a bit of work, though, in terms of just making sure everything is compatible with kind of the evolution of NFV.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Even though we've been in the software space for a number of years, right? NFV brings together certain concepts that are very, very important, like full-blown elasticity, orchestration, automation, programmability. And so making all that software do those things in the true sense of NFV and SDN is extremely important. So, we kind of are abiding by the key tenets of NFV very closely, right? And so we've demonstrated a number of things. We've been working with a number of service operators on that front, and we're excited on the levels of engagement we have going on with those service providers.
Very interesting. Now, I was going to ask you a bit about, I guess, what kind of reception have you seen from the operator community? Because NFV does seem to be one of those technologies that at least some say is being somewhat driven by the carrier community wanting to, have platforms that they can, spin up applications rapidly, not be locked into a certain vendor, for instance. I'm guessing, at least the people I've talked to, it seems like the carriers have been fairly receptive to it, though obviously they've got their own technology challenges involved, with a lot of the carrier grade aspects and things like that. I guess from Genband's point of view, how has the carrier community, I guess, reacted to what you guys have been offering in terms of these virtualized platforms?
No, we like I said, with respect to the carriers and the service providers, we're seeing tremendous amount of interest, and in actually not only is there a push from us to the service providers, but we're seeing a lot of pull happening in this case, which is quite unique, right? Where the service providers themselves, for business reasons and, of course, moving forward with 5G and other things, are motivated enough to say, okay, we need to change our operating environment. We need to take advantage of the cloud in the context of a telco cloud, and, take advantage of this new technology that is going to help us launch new services quickly, faster, and with operational efficiency, right? So we're seeing a tremendous amount of interest and pull for our solution sets on this front, and we're very excited to be, working closely with them and with some of our large ecosystem partners as well.
Interesting. Has there been any, I guess, specific challenges in the market in terms of what carriers have been asking for, and that the vendor community perhaps has been maybe a bit challenged in providing? Because obviously carriers do have sometimes somewhat unique requests, and obviously from a vendor perspective, you hate to have to make things specific to each operator. I mean, obviously you want to have a pretty broad platform that can work with various operators out there. I guess, has there been any specific challenges you've seen that have kind of maybe been a little difficult for you guys to kind of work through?
No, it's I mean, it's not all cakewalk by any means. So, no, yeah, it's what we're noticing is, as long as we're, abiding by some of these key concepts, I think, they welcome the engagement and the interactions, and actually, one of the barriers that the service providers themselves have is the learning curve associated with this new technology, right? And so, we have very, very good engagements where we share ideas and thoughts with respect to the technology, and use demonstrations to actually have people visualize how this would work, right? And that is taken very well. So it's a sharing of ideas, thoughts, and capabilities. And as long as we are working on those premises, I think the service providers actually appreciate that, and it makes it that much easy for us. And Genband as a whole, given we are focused on those aspects for our what we call our virtual network functions for different solution sets, we're seeing tremendous amount of engagement and interest in understanding our offers as well as learning.
Interesting. I know I've talked to some people about this as well, and they've kind of mentioned that one of the challenges they see maybe with operators is in the training of their employees. I mean, as we move towards these virtualized platforms, they've got very large employee bases there, and most of those employees are kind of have been used to the legacy systems, which have been a lot more hardware based, and so this move towards virtualized platforms is obviously a big challenge for a lot of them in trying to retrain and get people involved who have an understanding of these new software-based systems. I'm guessing, for a vendor out there, that's got to be maybe a little challenge here, but also it seems like an opportunity to maybe work in the managed services space, at least for initial deployments. Are you guys seeing any uptick, I guess, in terms of managed services, or is that something you guys deal a lot with in terms of your own platform?
No, definitely we're seeing those concepts, in the context of system integrators and taking, full end-to-end solution sets to the service providers, right, that are pre-integrated and offering managed services to that effect, right? So where Genband fits into that whole equation is we kind of provide the virtual network functions and aspects of the Manno part of the architecture, where we have a BNF manager that fits into that side of things. Basically, we work with a large ecosystem partners such as HPE and Intel and Wind River, Titanium and Canonical, and on and on and on, right? We work very closely with them, and then based on the service provider's choice of the system integrator, we work with that particular entity very, very closely to bring our solutions to bear.
Makes sense. Okay, and like you said too, I know the work, at least in terms of Manno, has been a lot of challenges. I know I did a report, I think about this time last year on Manno, and it seemed like at that time everybody I talked to was like, throwing their hands up in the air and saying we have no idea where it's going. We're lost in terms of what's happening with Manno. But it seems like over the past 6 months, especially, there's been a lot of work. I know Etsy's been doing quite a bit in terms of getting standards set for that. It seems like that's really starting to get some traction, and I'm guessing for you guys, it's making it maybe a little easier out there in the market.
Yeah, no. So we're luckily we're agnostic to the orchestration and virtualization infrastructure environment. So to a certain extent, we've been limited with respect to the impact to us on that. But yeah, certainly clearly open source Manno discussions are well underway, and the standards bodies themselves are figuring this out very, very actively, as you stated, right? So that's all good news for the industry and implementation of a full-blown NFV SDN architectures in the service provider networks, right, at scale. So I think it's all good news. It's the right thing to be doing, and figuring out exactly how all the orchestration, virtualization infrastructure pieces will come together with the OSS/BSS. So I'm glad the industry's making progress on that front.
Yeah, definitely. I know I need to revisit that topic at some point here, and maybe I'll get some positive commentary on it this time. But you also kind of mentioned the open source community as well. I know they've been a big part of this. I know the Linux Foundation has been behind a lot of initiatives as well. Is the open source community, do you think, doing some good work in terms of this movement and kind of getting everybody on kind of the same page in terms of these virtualized platforms? Because there's always the concern that the problem with open source is it gives you a good layer, a base layer, but then as you try to build on top of that, you kind of run into some issues where operators might need something a little more specific, and that tends to kind of then get off of the open source avenue, I guess, or roadway. Are you finding open source communities doing a pretty good job of keeping everybody at least pointed in the right direction?
Yeah, no. So there's certainly clear advantages of the open source communities. You get tremendous amount of contribution globally, and so there's definitely positive aspects of open source and the community, mind share that happens there in bringing value to the software that's put together, right? Luckily, where Genband sits is we sit at the virtual network function layer, which is actually where the service providers differentiate, and that's the layer that's not open source, right? But we do integrate and interwork into the open NFV or OP NFV side of things in the virtualization infrastructure side. Open Manno now on the Manno side, right? So we are pretty much agnostic to those environments, and we work very, very closely, and certainly we see a lot of benefits. And we're a big proponent of using OpenStack as well. So all of the above is really, I think they're very good initiatives and absolutely advantages for the service providers.
Makes sense. Okay. And I know one of the benefits of this move towards virtualized platforms is it allows the vendor community kind of, re-architect their business models as well. Obviously, if you can kind of sell, you're selling these things differently to operators. How have you guys changed the way you approach your operator agreements, or at least your other ecosystem partner agreements in terms of selling platforms? Is it easier now? Is it just a change of how you do things? What's been different now today than it was perhaps 3 or 4 years ago?
No, definitely. You bring a great point. The business models are definitely different from an appliance versus a software-only based approach that can be consumed either on a as a pay-as-you-go basis or a subscription basis, or can be consumed as perpetual licenses. What we're seeing on the service provider side is a number of variations of their desires on which ones of those that they like, right? And we're seeing a little bit of everything out there in all honesty, right, from different service providers. And the beauty is Genband has offerings for our virtual network functions like session border controllers and media software, etc. Right, where we offer different approaches based on what the desires of the service provider are. So definitely, yes, we're seeing different business models, which translates into different business arrangements between vendors like us and the large service providers. And we're seeing different ones out there.
Interesting. Obviously, it pays to be flexible and nimble, in terms of what you can work the operators with. Absolutely.
And then I think Genband, given the size of the company we tend to be very good at that.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And maybe a final question, kind of looking at your own kind of working with your various vendor partners and ecosystem partners, it seemed like for a while there, over the past, 18 months or so, every week there was a new vendor specific initiative or new, grouping getting together, kind of trying to push their own maybe unique offering in terms of VNFs or NFV platforms out there. Has that slowed down a bit? And what's the current, market like, if that's the right word for it, in terms of how ecosystem partners are kind of working together? Is it still a fairly collaborative effort, or are you finding there's a little segregation out there or segmentation out there? What's kind of happening in terms of the ecosystem community?
No, that's a great question, Dan. So what we are noticing now is basically it's all about implementation, right? It's about implementation from the service provider side, and they're the ones driving, saying, okay, great, it's, you have ecosystems that work together. We love it. And then they say, okay, go, they pick the vendors that they like the technology, and, Genband's often and on the front end there with respect to some of the BNFs. Mm-hmm. So what we are seeing is clearly now it's all about collaboration in terms of real engagements with service providers. And we're in the midst of quite a few of those right now.
Gotcha. And obviously, these are operators that we can't name just yet, but I'm sure we'll hear about them soon.
Absolutely. And the standard ones out there that have articulated their desires publicly, right?
So if we need to on those, but very good. Hey, well, Sanjay, we definitely appreciate the insight today. Obviously, you guys are doing quite a bit of work there in terms of the NFV space, and your VNFs are working out pretty well. So definitely appreciate the great insight on the topic today. Thanks so much for the time, and hopefully we'll touch base again soon on it. Well, thanks for watching this week's show, and make sure to check us out again next week when we are scheduled to speak with Intel on what operators should expect in terms of the business transformation that comes with rolling out NFV and SDN. Thanks for watching.
NFV SDN Reality Check with Dan Meyer is a production of RCR TV. To suggest show topics or to reach Dan, you can find him on email, dmeyer@rcrwireless.com, and on Twitter @Meyer_Dan. For more Dan, news on NFV SDN, and everything wireless, find your way over to rcrwireless.com.